Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. So in this video, we're going to look at end times communication. Roll the intro. Hey, we're back. So there's talk, there has been for a while now, at least a year I think, of some such thing as an internet kill switch, right? Wherewith the government, could shut down the internet at a moment's notice if they had to, if things were just getting out of control. I did a video where I mentioned, and you all know this, how YouTube is demonetizing some videos, and that's just a step towards the direction where they're just going to be taking videos offline, or they could. Whether it's the current administration of YouTube or if somebody else takes over or the government grabs it and says, no more of this is getting out. We hear things in the news about how they're trying to block alternative news sources is what they're doing. They're saying, that's not real news, so therefore it can't get airplay, FCC. Now, we may get a reprieve of much of this under the Trump administration. We may. Of course, I saw something today that, old Hillary, she's still going for it. So, who knows, right? But we also know that in an EMP type event, communications, be it the internet, your cell phone, even a landline phone, probably not going to work. Most ham radios are not going to work. And so in an end time scenario, whether that's man-made, naturally made, whatever, it could be all different things, communication will not be accomplished like it is now. And yet and still we, the people, are going to have to communicate. And so how do we do that? Well, one thing to think about is how we communicate now. Obviously, I'm communicating to you right now via YouTube, right? I don't know you. I don't know most of you. Out of all the viewers who watch this video, I probably know this many of you personally. And those of you that I know don't live here, right? You don't live within walking distance of me, probably not even horse riding distance of me. And so if communication went down, modern communication, if you will, we wouldn't be able to communicate in that way. I don't really want to talk about, well, I guess I can just a little bit, and then if you guys are interested, I can come back later. Anything you emit electronically, whether it be a YouTube video, a landline telephone, a cell phone call, a radio, whether it's ham or CB or FRS, if the powers that be are interested in you, they've got that. Or an email or a text. If the powers that be are interested in you, they have that. There's no encoding you can use. There's no, what was that? Pretty good privacy, PGP. If you're going against a world-class power, and there are several world-class powers out there in the line of encryption and decryption and communication, sucking that information in. If you're going against a world-class power, they've got you if you're emitting electronically. And so there are ways to communicate when you don't want Big Brother to know. That's probably another whole series of videos or classes or something like that. Let's just talk about you and me, right? Your group is over there, my group is over here, and we want to exchange information, we want to maybe do some bartering, blah, blah, blah. How do we talk to each other? Well, you have to start looking back at how did people communicate before electricity, right? Just go back before electricity, because people communicated, armies coordinated, the world was taken over several times by different military forces, and they didn't have radios or computers or anything like that, or telephones. So one thing you're going to have to do, and there was this phrase, I think it might have been like a hippie phrase, I'm not sure. I heard it a long time ago, and it was, think globally, act locally. You're going to have to act locally. And we get a lot of comments over a wide range of videos about, oh, you don't understand where I live, man. Everybody's a meth head, everybody's this, blah, blah, blah. I can't trust my neighbors, blah, blah. Okay, well, then you need to move if that's true. I can't move because, all right, another whole set of videos, right? Bottom line is your information is going to come locally. Now, how does that work? Well, one thing is you got to know who people are. Get away from my camera, dog. Go on, get. It amazes me the number of people in modern society who don't know their neighbors, who don't know the people on the street. You know, the town my dad grew up in didn't have telephones at first, and then they had the party line. For you old timers, you remember what that is. Everybody knew everybody, and everybody kind of knew everybody's business. A little bit, you know, small town Pennsylvania, right? But people talk to each other. When did they talk? Whenever they met. Whenever they met. You know, people would sit on porches, people would pass each other on the street, they would see each other in stores and post offices. I lived in Northern Virginia for a big chunk of my career. I was based out of there. And we came to the Midwest, to Kansas, for the last part of my military career. And I took 10 days off to come find a house, go back, get my family, and come back. And so I came out here, I drove around, I drove everywhere looking for a house. And the one thing that struck me, and again, I've been living in Northern Virginia forever. And Northern Virginia, for those of you who don't know, is pretty hip, pretty upscale, pretty modern, pretty crowded, but very, you know, very up there as far as society goes, and things working. And so I came out to the Midwest and things are slower out here. And what struck me was how people would actually talk to you, to a stranger. You know, I was looking for, at the time, a 3 to 5 bedroom house. And so I would stop in and I would get a Mountain Dew or something at one of those gas station grocery store things. And the woman would say, you know, you find everything all right? And I'd be like, yeah. She goes, how you doing? I said, good. It's hot out. She goes, yeah, it's hot. And she'd go on a conversation. Well, that would never happen when I lived in Northern Virginia. People didn't want to talk to you. It's like, take your money, get the heck out of here, right? I'm not going to have a conversation. Then I'd ask them something like, hey, do you know anywhere where there's a house for rent around here? Well, what kind of house? I don't know, 3 to 5 bedroom. Oh, a big one. Maribel, do you know where there's a house around here? And a conversation would start, and Mary Bell would walk out from the back room where she was making pizza, and they would talk to me, and they would say, well, go down here and talk to here, go talk to the bank. And so I would go around to all these places, and people would talk. See, they haven't really lost that out in this part of the country. And conversation is a skill that we're all going to have to redevelop, as opposed to this. You know, those people who sit in a restaurant at the same table and are texting each other instead of conversing. And so you're going to have to start talking to people. Well, how do you get good at that? Start now. Just start talking to people. Are you somebody who talks to the person behind you in line at the grocery store? I am. Right? Get, dog. Get. Dogs. Puppies. I talk to anybody. I talk to everybody. Some people are a little put off by it. And then so I use that as a training opportunity. When I see them kind of go, like that, I try to figure out, okay, how do I bring them in? You know, how do I talk to them? How do I relate to them? How do I find something we can converse about? And I'm usually successful. And the way you get better at that is practice. And there's techniques and stuff like that that you can throw at people too. But really, you just have to start talking to people. So that's one. Number 2 is you have to form your circles, right? And it's not something new that I've talked about. I've talked about it on this channel a lot, but you need to have your group and then this other group, and you can be a member of different groups, but all of a sudden you have these circles of which you are a member. Example, you're a member of the tennis club, and you're a member of the Wives Bridge Club, and you're a member of the homeschooling co-op, and you're a member of your little survival group, and some of these people are the same and some people aren't. Well, all of a sudden now you're plugged into all these different sources of information. And so that's how you gather the information, that's how you pass the information in one way, and so that starts working out now. Well, how do you get it out of your local community to a community that today is, you know, a 3-hour drive away? More difficult. Remember the Pony Express? Remember the early mail service? Something like that will happen again. You know, truck drivers, 18-wheelers, those guys go all over the place. start cultivating friends that are 18-wheeler drivers, or you guys who drive, tractor trailers. Start thinking about delivering messages and packages, not illegal packages. Packages are things to people along your route. Because that's a way that information could get passed. Are the trucks going to be running? I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. Maybe still communication is broken. So there's just different options to think about. If you want to go to the next town that's 5 miles away, how about somebody on a bicycle, right? The courier. You could designate a courier, you could identify a courier, or you could just find people that are naturally doing that and say, hey, can you carry this down here to those people? And so those kind of things set up. But what it takes is knowing people. You have to have a network of people, which means you got to get out from behind that computer and you got to get out there in the big wide world and start talking to people. In Europe, actually out here, they have it too in a different form, but in Europe they have these like pillars about this big out in the like cities and around town, and people just put like posters and flyers and their version of 3x5 cards up there with information, and then people can go read that information and the word spreads. Around here, well actually around in the Ozarks where I live, you go to like the local diner and there's always a bulletin board, or you go into the post office and right as you walk in there's a bulletin board, or you walk to the bank and there's a bulletin board inside. And there's all kinds of information on that bulletin board. People are saying, house cleaning, good rates, dependable, babysitter, lawnmower wanted. I mean, there's just all this communication going on. And then, yes, there's phone numbers on there now to call. But it could just as simply be, come to, 13758 Blue House on the corner of 5th and Elm, something like that. But you could post these on known bulletin board sites, and then the information can travel that way. You see it in movies. It happened in medieval times. It happened here in our country when the pioneers were going west. Every time somebody new comes into town, they have an audience. I was just talking about how people were bored, back in biblical times, and so when a new person came, everybody's listening. It's good to hear. Well, if somebody new is coming into town, the first thing everybody wants to know is what's going on where you came from. What news? What news do you bring? You remember the movies with the kings and the kings sitting up there and they announce somebody so-and-so from, like I like that movie, The Black Knight, from Florence and Normandy. And it's like, what news do you bring? He's like, well, he'll be here Tuesday. These types of things are going to happen. Again, people skills are required. Being super, paranoid, don't want to talk to anybody, man. Somebody might know who I am. That's not going to cut it. As far as communication. Communication has to happen two ways, right? And so start thinking about those things, and really you have to start developing your people skills and your networks. And the more networks you can kind of be plugged into now, the better. Let's say you are in a group. Let's say you have a group or you're on a homestead and another group over here. Take time now, while you can drive over there, to get to know those people, to make friends with them, to become acquainted with them, to develop bonds of trust with them. And so that when times come, when communication isn't so easy, when a messenger comes and they say, hey, Pastor Joe sent me and he said this, and there's a little code word from Pastor Joe that we've already pre-agreed on, that means, yeah, this is really for me. It's like, okay, yeah, this is a good message. But you got to know these people now, and then they'll know people further down the line, and further down the line, and further down the line, and I'm starting to get into a little bit of different areas, so I want to stop right there. So to sum up, develop your people skills, develop your networks, join more networks, and I'm not talking about internet networks. It doesn't matter how many friends you have on Facebook. It matters how many people you know flesh and blood, that you can actually reach out and touch their hand. And finally, I'm reading this book again for I think the third time, and I was just reading a thing about communication. This is an interesting book. You can probably get it on Amazon for like 10 cents plus shipping and handling. The Starfish and the Spider. Leaderless Organizations, The Unstoppable Power. There's a lot about communication in here and how it happens and how it works. Most of us, that might not be true. Definitely most of the people I hang out with, prior military type people, we think in a hierarchical way. Leader, sub-leaders, captains of hundreds, captains of 50s, captains of 10s, right? That's biblical. This talks about more flexible groupings of people and how they communicate and operate and act. Might be worth your time to read it. I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, I'm reading it, I think, for the third time now. I've got a lot of notes and stuff in it already. All right, start thinking about how you're going to communicate. Start working it out now. Start making friends now, at least acquaintances now. Develop your rapport building skills. All right, I'll see you out there.